Today we are going to talk about sexting. We started to talk like in the second part of this project about I don't know if I heard someone.
I think it was just a mic that went on.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about digital spaces. So we decided to talk about sexting. Sexting is like a sharing of mildly to fully sexual, explicit written text, images, video, or audio. So it's like a sexual erotic interaction that can have multiple ways of taking place through online communication. And as any other sexual practice, it requires communication. Okay, so communication about the preferred style, the tool, the context, the online app, which make us feel safer for having this kind of interaction. And of course, consent has to be one of the main topic in this communication. Okay, so why we decided to talk about sexting? Sexting is a part of digital sexuality, and as we said in all our meetings, having like a judgmental and paternalistic approach is not a good tool to build a trusting relationship with the people that we work with. So sexting should not be demonized, and it is important to talk about it in terms of awareness, in terms of safety, consent, for giving people the tools to live their sexuality consciously, freely, and informed. So openly talking about sexting help people recognize their consent, the extent of their consent, the interpersonal dynamics in which they don't feel safe, in which they don't feel comfortable. So help them recognize abusive behaviors, coercive behavior, and to take responsibility for how they use and share the images that they receive. And this is like super linked to what we talked about in the past meetings about recognizing that we have a possibility for action. So in online spaces, so we are not passive users, especially in interaction that requires us accountability. So at the core of this practice, there must be always mutual consent from everyone, okay, involved in this interaction. So both in sending and receiving materials. I think we already talked about this acronym that is FRIES. So the consent must be freely given. So there has not to be any form or of coercion or control. So it has to be reversible. That means that if I say yes at one time, I have the complete right to say no in any time after that. It has to be informed, and that is why it's super important to talk, to openly talk about sex and about sexting, and to be informed also specifically in online spaces about how the online platform work. It has to be enthusiastic, and this is super important while talking about sexual interaction online, because we can see like the enthusiasm, and we can perceive the kind of yes the people are saying to us when we are in a situation which we can perceive like their body language, okay? But when we are online, we don't have that. So it is super important for like that kind of interaction, that people in that interaction take responsibility. And again, here the fact of not being passive users online. And it has to be specific. So it means that if I'm saying yes to a specific practice that we are putting like an agreement on, there is no assumption that I'm saying yes to any other practice that it can be like similar or can be different. So digital consent is not only about sending something, because in online spaces the consent have the shapes of the online spaces. So it's also about receiving, it's about saving, showing, screenshotting, commenting, or reposting. So having a communication with someone about this means try to have an agreement and to share what make us feel comfortable or not with all the action that can be done online. So a person may consent to send an image to one person in one moment, in one context, and that does not mean that they consent to anything else. So for having an idea about the communication about consent in this context, consent before sending. So people can ask themselves if they really want to send this, if they feel pressured in any way, if they trust the person, if they have talked about what can and cannot be done with this image, if they like the way they are doing this, because it can happen that you like the general idea, but you would prefer maybe doing that in another way, maybe in another online platform, or this kind of stuff. Consent before receiving means asking something like, would you like me to send you something? Are you comfortable receiving this? Is this a good moment for you? What kind of messages or image do you like or not like? Is there something that you would like me to know before having this kind of interaction? I don't know if you can come up now with any other question. If not, we can go ahead and talk about our role, okay? Because we have an educative role in this while talking with teenager. We know that young people learn about sexting from social media, from online culture, from peers. So adults are not the main source of information about sexing. And so when we are chosen for having a conversation about sexting, if we react with panic or shame or punishment, we know for sure that people will be less likely to ask for help or for any other information. So community and schools can create spaces where question can be asked, where sexuality is not treated as a taboo, where we can talk about accountability, we can talk about consent, we can talk about any doubts that you have. So about talking about consent, we know that we live in a cultural context that shaped our idea, our thoughts, and our implicit also thoughts about sexting. So it is completely okay that maybe we bring in the conversation some implicit assumption that can be judgmental, because this is how our society deals with this kind of topics. Okay, so I think that one of the tool for try to get in contact with this implicit assumption that we have is to imagine the sexual interaction outside the online spaces, to realize what assumption we are bringing into the conversation that are actually related to the fact that this interaction is happening online. For example, one idea that I heard a lot while talking about sexting is, for example, that one of the risks of sexting is the non-consensual sharing of the material sent. That maybe is said with the best intention, but it's literally like saying one of the risks of having sex is abuse, because non-consensual sharing of the material sent is an abuse and is not one of the risks. It involves violent dynamics. It involves people not taking the responsibility for the dynamics that they put in the interaction. So this kind of conversation related to online communication, as we said, completely miss the point of people responsibility. Another example can be after you've sent a picture, you never know what can happen. That is literally like saying after you're giving your consent, you never know what the other person can do. That I think is something that we never even imagined to say while talking about a sexual interaction. So putting like the focus in this way can help us see what assumption we bring into the conversation while talking about sexting. And that is important to focus on because people have the right to explore their sexuality in any way they choose if there is consent from like all the party involved. So it's important, as we said from the beginning, how we talk about this, we talk about this, and for this reason also a sex positive and sex neutral approach, so that has the aim to inform rather to instill guilt or fear, makes people the possibility to make informed choices. And also this here is important also to remember the sex neutral approach, because people can feel sexual desire in any possible way, and it is important that we don't assume that we don't assume that everyone, I don't know, wants to have sexing or wants to have sexing in a specific way. So to not fall in the idea of performative sex also here. So it is important, the language, because when we change the language, we say we change the educational frame. So we know that a blaming sentence creates shame, creates silence, while a consent-based sentence creates awareness and responsibility. So useful message can be, you are not responsible for someone else's violation of your consent. This means that it's not your fault, and this means that I believe you. So you have the right to ask for help. The person who receives an image is responsible for what they do with it. And this about responsibility, it is super important, because we will have the time in the second part of this meeting to talk about responsibility online. And it is okay to talk about desire and to talk about safety. And trust is important, but consent and responsibility are still necessary, because we can trust someone. It is super beautiful when we feel that we trust someone. That does not mean that we know for sure what they think and what are their experiences with this kind of interaction, with any kind of interaction. So it is important to not assume stuff and to trust the feeling that we have about trust for that person, to have a conversation about consent and responsibility, to agree on what we can do and what we cannot do. So, like, to sum up everything, how can I talk about sexing with teenager? So to avoid moralistic, blaming, and judgmental tones, to use a respectful language, to create a safe space for open dialogue and discussion, where open also means that you are open with yourself, that maybe, I don't know, people ask you some stuff that you don't know. That is like super okay. You're not there for solving all their problems and all their doubts. You can look for information together. Then reinforce the idea that sharing intimate image can be a valid and legitimate form of sexual expression, and that is totally okay if you don't want to do it for any reason. And for you specifically, that it is super okay not to feel comfortable talking about this topic. So if you are not in the right mindset to be like a good listener or facilitator, it's fine to say so. And it's like even better to say so, because if you go through a conversation about this and you don't have the energy in that moment, you don't have the right like mindset to be in that conversation, I don't know, it will be not a good moment to share information and to actually create a trusting relationship with the teenager you're working with in that moment. So it's super okay, and you can maybe suggest to come back to the conversation like in another time, or to find someone else to talk with.
Sexting and responsibility. So this part, as said, it's more on the legal aspect. So we'll go through some laws that are tutelating the victims of non-consensual sharing. So they believe that no one has control over what happens online weakens the sense of responsibility for one's action on the internet. Talking about self-determination online also means addressing personal accountability. When it comes to sharing intimate or sexual images, it can happen to find courses which provide advice on how to engage in safer sexting in order to protect oneself. For example, covering one's face, hiding tattoos, or avoiding making one's location identifiable. This suggestion can be useful if they help people feel safer in their sexual expression. At the same time, it is important to remember that responsibilities for safety does not lie with the person sending the images, but with the person receiving them. And this is a lot about going back to consent and what Yere was saying before, that like we cannot consider as a risk of affecting the abuse, because abuse is abuse. So as we have already said in previous lessons, when we talk about images, sharing, and sexual content, the focus must always remain on the consent and well-being of the people involved. Consent must last for all the acts. If it fails, even at the very last part of the act, you have to stop. Yeah, I can do the first two. So although revenge porn is the most commonly used term, even in legal context, to refer to the sharing of intimate or sexual images without the consent of the person who sent them, it is not the correct term. And the reason is that this situation is not porn. As you said, pornography is visual, textual, or auditory material intended to arouse sexual excitement within a mutually consensual and or professional context. And the word revenge implies that there was some kind of wrongdoing to begin with, which would justify an act of revenge. This again shifts the blame and contributes to secondary victimization. More appropriate terms are non-consensual sharing of intimate images, non-consensual distribution of intimate images, and image-based sexual abuse. In Europe, we have different legal systems that regulated the phenomenon. For instance, in France, since 2016, sharing intimate contents is an injury. Since 2015, in Spain, sharing intimate content is punished only if the people represented are damaged by it. And since 2019, in Italy, sharing, producing, posting without consent is punished, even if the aim is not to damage the people portrayed. Germany has no civil law about this. And if you come from other countries, such as Luxembourg, probably for sure, and you know about it and you wanna share, you're welcome. So to conclude, European Union doesn't have a proper law. The real problem is that European law doesn't oblige major social and sites to remove content reported by the victims as no consensual or sexual content. And yes,
Hi, Rachele.
hi Camilla. I just read the slide.
I'm very sorry for the delay, but today I'm in court for a sexual harassment, and it has been a very bad morning. Sorry for the delay. I was supposed to finish at 10:15, and I'm just finished now. So here it is. Thank you, Rachele, for reading this slide. Yes, Carrie, thank you. You have given me a good start, because if you see the date that I put when all European orders got a proper law, you can see that they are very, very, very new. From 2015, in Italy 2019. Also in Germany, we don't have a crime legislation about non-consensual sharing. Why? Because I think that for our culture, it isn't a priority, as Carrie said in chat. We start talking about sharing intimate stuff almost 10 years ago. It's a very young legislation. And, you know, in this lesson, I say that Italy, in the very, very last years, has improved a lot their legislation about intimate stuff and sexual harassment, because it's the only order that punish not also sharing, but sharing, producing, posting, and stealing. This is important because it's the only order that punish when someone register without consent. So, for example, with an hidden camera, intimate images, intimate videos, intimate stuff. Yesterday, and I'm very happy that we can talk about it now during this lesson, Italian Major Court, Cassazione, has a very important statement about grooming and sexting, because it said that we have grooming and pedopornography also with the sharing not of images, but with sharing of intimate text, intimate chats, if we can prove that there is a not equal relationship between the part of the chat. And if you remember, when we talk about grooming about 1 month ago, we say that the focus is the not equal situationship about the part of the vision, about the part of this relationship. So going back on the European Act, Europe doesn't have a proper law, we are still talking about DSA, it's the Digital Service Act. Digital Service Act is a law that don't talk properly about texting of intimate producing. It involves all the digital communication, and we try to have an article, the 24B, that punish the diffusion about intimate content. But almost all the member states vote against this article. Why? Because there is the same problem we talk about, if you remember, pornography and video pornography. We want to protect the privacy of the user. I think it's awful that we consider better to protect the privacy of an user, I think an adult user, and not to protect a victim. I think that we can talk about this problem for hours. We must have a cultural changement. We must change the focus. We can't still talking about protecting privacy of the user and not to protect victim. Then we can talk also about to protect the privacy of the victim, but it's another problem, and not there isn't in all Europe a proper law about this. So we don't have a European law that is the same for every member state, as always happened, and only 3 state members has a proper injury. I think that very peculiar is Germany. Germany hasn't an injury. Listen, when we talk about the injury systems, we suddenly think about jail, about punishment. But in the modern orders, have an injury system that works good is also prevention. I know that this is a certain punishment. Germany said to not have an injury regulation about this theme, but to put only about civil law. It thinks that it seems that I will not be punished, okay, about this theme, but I had to pay a charge. I think that it gives us a very cultural message of what we think about this thing. If you have any questions about this, about how regulation is in Europe? Just one thing that I forgot to say. In Italy, we every day have a good work about our local courts that try to change culture. Some local court, and it's peculiar because it's more frequent in. I'm coming, Paola. It's more frequent in very small court, like I'm from Savona, or from Genova, or from the Low Piedmont, and not in the major court that try to punish some behavior, have an interpretation more cultural oriented. Please, Paola.
Sorry, my question was, in Italy, it doesn't say specifically if it's like intimate picture. Is it any picture, like if someone takes a photo of you in public and they share it, or if it's only like, yeah, intimate? What's the difference?
Yes, so it's two different injuries because just a second, that I would like to read to you the article that we are talking about. The very new article talking about images that have sexual content. What I just said, so private photo, for example, I'm in an isolated pub with a girl or a guy, and we are talking very strictly, but we are not supposed to be in public, and you made a photo of us and share it. It's not this proper injury, but yes, it's also an injury that is called violenza privata, or because you made me to try. Just a second. You made me to have a behavior from you and to tolerate it without can doing anything. So in Italy we have the difference from Italy with the other orders, like for example UK, is that we have a lot of injuries, and it's not sometimes is a good thing because we can find in our code an injury for every behavior, but something it's made difficult to interpret some a behavior that is in the line. Okay, I'm not sure if I answer to you.
Yes, I think yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other questions? For example, I'm just sorry, Paola. I just see the message you have sent in chat. There is another injury that is called diffamazione. If you share something not with sexual content, but that it was supposed to be intimate. For example, I write to you a secret. I write to you something that for me is very intimate, very important, very to be protected. For example, something about my sexual orientation, and you share it with other people. Here we have an injury that is called diffamazione. It is very peculiar because the code said that is something that has hit my honor, and it happened to me that in trial someone says, but if I say to other people that you say you have a kind of a sexual orientation, it's not to hit your honor. It's not this business. And the local court where I work, the Savona, said no, because it's a injury about honor, because what you hit is not the sexual orientation, but the purpose that is it would be intimate. It was a confidential message. Okay, and I think it is important that this kind of behavior are punished, because we must to be sure that we have safe spaces and space moments where we can share and talk to other people. Other questions? So I think Ira, you can go on, or maybe Raki.
The other the slides were these, but I don't know if you wanted to add
Yes, sure.
anything.
Yes.
If not, okay.
Yes, it's very peculiar that we use this term, revenge porn, because we focus on revenge, we focus on this term, and not on what it would be blame and what we would protect. I think we have a very particular skill that can put the focus on we in Italy we use to focus the worst thing. Revenge porn is the worst expression of what we call this injury, because with this injury we would punish and blame a person who steal intimate content and share it without without the consent. And please notice that in Italy we have two kinds of this injury. The first one punish without the purpose of damage the victim. The second one punish the specific purpose to damage the victim. This why? Because the very first kind of this injury doesn't consider the stupidity. Sorry, I can't name it in other way, of people that share not for damage, but also for because they're very stupid and they haven't a purpose of damage. So the very first script of this injury made a lot of people get safe from a trial, saying, I don't want to damage it. This is why we call the revenge porn, because the very first focus was on the revenge. But we don't punish also the purpose of damage the victim. Would you like to say something about it? Sorry, just a thing. In Italy, we call it revenge porn, but the very proper name of the article is non-consensual sharing of sexual images. So revenge porn is the name that we gave it in the practice. Ira and Raki, would you like to add something?
No, I think we can conclude this part. If there are no more questions, we have some slides about what's coming next after these online trainings to show you. So like we will close and change the topic. So if you have questions, this is kind of last moment, because after this, the class would be, the theoretical class would be over. Basically, we've been together for these months for the online training, which is part of a bigger project. So Sexuality Connect has different actions. The one that we are concluding today was the action 2, and the action 3 is about creating an online space that can be like a repository of contents, something that we can imagine as the Padlet that we try to create throughout all the meetings, and which indeed will be useful for this next everything we worked on, everything we collected, and of course some new stuff will go all together in this online space. So I am gonna introduce these slides to you to tell you more about how you can contribute to this online space. Sure, if you're interested and you need more information, or if my information are not clear, which is probably the case, you can join us tonight, like this evening, for the training from 5:30 to 8:30. Because there will be the people, the facilitators that are in charge of this new section that will explain to the class what this is about. So maybe they will be able to answer your questions in that occasion. You can also like do the math and think about, okay, the first 2 hours, 1 hour and a half would be for the theory, so you can join after 1 hour and a half from the beginning, so you don't have to go through the first part if you don't want to. So there will be five meetings. Those are the dates at 4:30, in which you can join and you can contribute to the creation of this online space in terms of contents. If you need more information, again, you can join later, but you will for sure receive some more details also through the usual emails that you've been receiving so far.